Hi everyone, welcome to the YouTube series of the Industry Talks. My name is Daniel, the current host of the PTC Industry Talks. We hope you enjoy the video. Our guest speaker for today is Captain Cameron Williams. Cam began his career in 2008 at the Stellenbosch Flying Club and worked in the contract and training industry before taking up a position at FlySafair in 2017. Cam has recently upgraded to command on the Boeing 737 and currently has over 4,300 hours on various types. He's here to share his journey with us and explain to us the steps and decisions he took to get him to where he is today, which is the left-hand seat of a commercial jet airliner. Cam, welcome and thanks for joining us today on Industry Talks.
Thanks so much, Dan. Really appreciate all the effort, and it's awesome to be online with you guys.
Thanks, Cam. Yeah, it's really good to see you again. Let's just start off straight into it. Cam, tell me, you've recently upgraded to an airline captain now, achieving a goal that many of us starting out in industry hope to achieve one day. Cam, where did the dream of becoming an airline captain all start? Where did the passion begin for you?
It's actually an interesting one. I don't really have the traditional type of passion for aviation from a really young age. As a young boy, I kind of didn't know what I was going to do after finishing school, and one of the things that I was keen to look at was electrical engineering. But for some reason, I was into mines and I applied. Didn't really get in. I don't know if I didn't get in because I was either not smart enough or I applied too late. It was one of those two, definitely. But nonetheless, at that same time, my uncle, who was also a flight instructor at that point, suggested, why don't you start flying? Give it a go, you know? And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to sit around for this whole year doing nothing. Why don't I just give it a bash? So from that moment, I then began the ground school and the PTL exams and all that stuff. And that's when the passion actually began. And I thought, man, I love this. This is amazing. It's got all the things that I actually enjoy, you know, the technical aspects and the flying. And I'm very much a person who likes, you know, practical things and engines. And so from that point onwards, it was amazing. I knew that this is exactly what I'm meant to be doing.
Okay, that's kind of interesting, you know, because a lot of people often say that you got to have this passion from very, very young on. You know, we grew up with pictures of planes on a wall, and you know, just showing that, you know, it doesn't necessarily need to be the case. You don't always have to know exactly what you're doing straight out of school. Now, Cam, you were quite lucky in that you said you had an uncle that was a flight instructor at the time.
Yeah.
Do you have any other family that are involved in aviation in any other way?
So it was my uncle, and then I've also got a cousin who also, funnily enough, works for FlySafair. And then my brother is involved in technical and maintenance at Airlink. So it is a little bit in the family, but not many family members.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, Cam, when did you complete your training?
So I began in 2008 with the PTL. Completed that towards the end of 2008. That's when I joined ATTRAC in Port Elizabeth, and at the end of 2009, I got my commercial pilot's license. And one of my aviation mentors, Keith Patterson, actually tested me for that. And then in the early 2010, the following year, I did my grade 3 instructor's rating. So I would say I've completed all my tertiary education about April 2010.
Okay, April 2010. Okay, that's relatively quick. Okay, once you completed your training, you said you went on to instruct. Well, you did your grade 3 instructors. Now,
yes.
Often recently qualified pilots sit at the predicament where it's the old story. I need a job to get experience, but I also need the experience to get the job. How did you get your first start in the industry? Was it through flight instruction, or did you start off in the contract industry?
It was through flight instruction, but it was a bit of a tricky one. As you know, to get that first job, the first money-earning job, should I say, is really tough for commercial pilots. And I got my instructors in 2010, and I spent the whole year doing other odd jobs. I was a pizza delivery boy. I was a waiter in a restaurant, and I felt that I needed to stay in Port Elizabeth at that time, and
sure,
I maybe could have gone to Johannesburg, but I just opted to try and push through and stay there. And then eventually, right towards the end of the year, I met someone, and they actually gave me my first job, and that was at Madiba Bay School of Flight, which began in 2011. And that was the almost foot in the door that I needed.
Sure.
I didn't do a lot of flying, but I did a couple of 100 hours, and that was that sort of head start that I needed to just get that initial experience. And I'm really grateful for that first opportunity.
Okay, so it's just through someone that you know by chance.
Yeah, so a mate of mine was aware that I was looking for work, and he was chatting to the owner of the flight school at that point, and he said, "Hey, I know someone who's got a grade 3. This guy, he needs a job." It was just right place, right time. Super grateful for just how it worked out, and that's where it sort of kicked off.
Okay, so you're obviously at SAFAir at the moment. Cam, tell me, how long did you spend instructing, and where did you actually end up in terms of instruction? Did you leave Madiba and go onto contract, or did you work for any other organizations as well?
So I spent a year at Madiba Bay School of Flight, and that and at that stage my goal was actually to try and return to the flight school where I learned AFTRAC.
Sure.
I wanted to return there as a flight instructor. That was my short-term goal at that point. And so I was pushing for that and aiming for that. And eventually, after a year of instruction as a grade 3 at Madiba, I got the opportunity to interview for a job at AFTRAC, which I then got in 2012. And that was kind of a really big breakthrough moment for me, I think, in my career, just getting into AFTRAC and as a flight instructor. It was a goal that I had, and I got there eventually. Yeah.
Fantastic. And how did you transition then out of instruction?
So 2011, 12, 13, 14, I spent instructing. So a good 4 years worth of instructing. Managed to get my grade 2 instructors through that process. And once again, through somebody that I knew, somebody that I had known from the aviation industry in Port Elizabeth, which is relatively small, they presented the opportunity to go on contract in the DRC up in the Congo, and that was to fly on a caravan. So the agreement was you've got a job as long as you get the training and the type rating. So I took the chance and went for it.
Okay, so caravan operations in the Congo. Cam, how long were you involved in the contract operation that side?
It wasn't very long, to be honest. Traditionally, we find in aviation that somebody will stay on contract for 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 years. It depends on every person is different. But I actually spent a relatively short amount of time on contract, about a year and a bit maybe. And my reason for not continuing on the contract journey was twofold. One was there was another opportunity that was presented to me, which I had difficulty turning down. And the other reason was because I was recently married, and the contract life is difficult. It is really hard. You spend 8 weeks. For me, I spent 8 weeks in the Congo and 2 weeks at home in South Africa. So that was really tough. And I decided, okay, man, I have to make this call. It's a difficult decision, but I'm going to take the risk and return to South Africa actually, because it was my personal sort of conviction to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. I mean, you go with what you feel is the right decision. Just touching back on that contract experience, did you find that experience meaningful? What did you take away from it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was invaluable to me as a pilot. I learned a lot about weather operations, IFR operations. I learned a lot about how you can't always rely on ATC to be to be protecting you and keeping you safe. You've got to actually look out for yourself and make the most appropriate decision based on on what's happening around you. Operating in Africa, Uganda, DRC is very different and a lot less, should I say, regulated than our South African environment. Our South African air traffic controllers are really good in comparison, and so you learn about weather and ATC ops, other traffic, short, muddy runways, all of the good stuff. And so that was a great learning curve for me.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that the caravan's built for, and what an awesome experience. But do you feel that the experiences you had as a flight instructor leading up to that point helped prepare you for the demands of contract operations, or was it a completely different experience?
It definitely did. It was, when you're a flight instructor, you carry the responsibility of that flight for yourself and your students, and so that, in a sense, helped me. Another aspect which was extremely beneficial was the way in which we used to operate as flight instructors. We used an SOP, we used a checklist, and we had developed these procedures, which we find in the contract world, which the ab initio training world wasn't really doing at that stage, other than AFTRAC and 43. So that whole philosophy of a standard operating procedure and checklist usage and multi-crew type exposure was hugely beneficial for me going into contract.
Okay, so that's quite interesting. Now, you also mentioned that you worked in the contract industry for particularly long. What you mentioned, I think you mentioned around about a year, where you made the decision to come back to South Africa to take up an offer. What offer did you receive?
So it was a bit of an interesting one. I actually ferried the caravan from the DRC to Lanseria for unscheduled maintenance. It wasn't planned. I wasn't even meant to be off tour at that stage. It was completely, it was last minute. And I then was flown by the company down to PE because the aircraft was in the hangar for a week. And in that 1 week window, I popped in at PTC Aviation to say hello to old friends like yourself, and just to pop in and visit. And then Keith Patterson said to me, this was on a Friday, he said, "Hey, on Monday we're interviewing for instructors. Are you keen to come and interview?" So I said, "Cool, I'll see you there." And so the timing was perfect. The way that it worked out, I wasn't even meant to be there. And then on Monday, I put on my fanciest shirt and my tightest pants, and I went for the interview. And it was successful, which I'm really grateful for.
Okay. So during your time at PTC, was that mostly focused on this flight instructor development?
So my time at PTC was mixed between the airline pilot preparation and the 737 aspect, as well as the flight instructor development. Initially, it was only focused on 737. So I would say the majority of the time was 737 based. And then towards the end, I did a lot more instructor development, teach the teacher, train the trainer type of courses.
Okay. So you were with PTC for about 2 years?
That's correct. Yeah, 2015 to 2017, just over 2 years.
And then from PTC, so 2017, you went from PTC into SAFAir. How did you go about actually applying and obtaining an interview at SAFAir?
So, fortunately, during my time at PTC, I was really lucky to be given a 737-800 type rating due to a situation that we had where students needed a SIM partner, and it was the right place, the right time. I said yes, please. So the 737 type rating, I think, was a deal breaker for me getting the opportunity at SAFAir. I applied through the normal channels. I went onto their website and filled out all the stuff. And I didn't actually meet all of the requirements that they stipulated. But I think the fact that I had the type rating already was a bit of a swaying, a bit of a trump card, because they saw that and they realized, well, I could be less training for this person, and got invited for the interview. So that was really surreal. Couldn't believe it, actually.
Well, it was the big moment after all these years of effort. Now, Camo, how many operators did you apply for? Or was it just a case of applying to SAFAir and getting the job offer off the bat?
No, it was definitely a process over a long time, many months, even maybe even a year. Multiple operators within South Africa, trying to make contact with certain people, and even at PTC, we were introduced to many different people from different operators, and trying to just establish those connections. So yeah, it wasn't just one application and an invite and off you go. It was quite a long process, and all of the other avenues were kind of closing, and the doors were closing for those companies for whatever reason, I don't know. But yeah, and then I got the email from SAFAir.
Okay, fantastic, Cam. Now, you had a bit of exposure to 737 jet training at PTC, and you really made an effort to kind of network with people to make these opportunities happen for yourself. How did can you just take us through the interview process at SAFAir? I imagine a lot of operators have similar processes. Can you just take us through that process, and then explain to us how your foundation that you received at PTC helped prepare you for that?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, the interview process that I experienced is broken up into 3 sections. The first one is the panel interview, where you are introduced to an HR representative and various captains or training captains from the company, from FlySafair. So I had an HR rep and 2 training captains from SAFAir. It was obviously extremely nervous, and however, I was pleasantly surprised. It was quite a relaxing environment. I was made to feel at home, and the interview process was maybe 30 to 40 minutes, I would say. Not very long. That first stage involved technical questions, type-specific questions, some law questions, some Jefferson-based questions on charts, etc. And I was asked a few questions on the 1900, and I said, "Can you rather ask me questions on the 737, please? Because I don't know." And then they went over to the 737, and those questions were fine. I was able to answer those. So that's the first stage. Then you wait for an email to say if it was successful or not. Fortunately, that was successful. Then the second stage began, which is the psychometrics. So the psychometrics are done by a third-party company. They come into SAFAir, they set up their computers, and you run through hundreds of questions. These are personality type questions. They try to decipher what type of person you are. They try to identify if you have any sort of risky traits or risky characteristics, all of these things. So the psychometrics are not necessarily something that you can prepare for. What the main thing about psychometrics is that you need to be honest and you need to be consistent. So as you answer questions, you can't change your, how your personality, or you can't change your trait as you go through, because later on it will catch you. So just consistency.
So you can't essentially try to trick the system, Cam.
Yeah, exactly. So just try and be as honest as possible. Try and think of yourself as an airline crew member, or think of yourself as an airline captain. How would I answer this question as an airline captain? Even if you're applying for an FO job, just think of it as that, from that context or from that perspective. That was helpful for me. Fortunately, I got through the psychometrics. They were successful. And then the final phase was the sim check. Now, FlySafair prepares you with a simulator pack. They email you with some information. They show you the flight profile. They explain to you what speed you will fly, at what flap settings you're going to do a takeoff, do some turns, etc., etc. And then that's a 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe sim session. Once that is complete, you then wait for the news as to how you did. So that's the third and final phase. And I think for me, something that kept on coming up, that kept on popping into my mind, was just how grateful I was to have experienced the PTC sim. Without the jet handling understanding and without that prior 737, even albeit simulator, without that experience, I would have really struggled. I really would have struggled. And I'm so grateful for that, because, to be honest, if I came off another aircraft like a 1900, I think it's doable. Definitely, it is doable, but it would have been very, very tough for me, I think. So yeah, that was a huge bonus. I felt comfortable in the simulator. I knew where to look. I knew what was going on, and obviously the procedures. So it was really it was great. I just felt confident in what I was doing.
Yeah, so you just had kind of you were comfortable in your environment, you knew everything was, and you essentially knew what was expected of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so from that point onwards, that process was successful. And then I was given a start date. They said, "Cool, you start on this date. Congratulations," which was one of the best emails that I've ever received.
I can bet you probably got that printed and saved somewhere.
Yeah, it was amazing. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Now you got the opportunity. You applied. You went through the process, which appears to be an incredibly rigorous process. You were fortunate that you'd already completed a type rating prior to starting at FlySafair, and you even said that that kind of experience was massively beneficial in the interview. Now, considering that they got you as a pilot that's already holding a type rating on the aircraft type which they're operating, what was the training process after that? What further training had to be completed to get you onto the line? Was it very much a case of brush up, or did they put you through a whole training program equivalent to a type rating?
So the way it worked is I was paired with back in 2017 when I joined as a first officer, I was paired with a newly upgraded captain, but that captain needed to do his PIC on a 400, a 737-400. So I did the full 400 course, the 10 sim session, that's the initial, which I needed to do anyway. But then after that, I was meant to do another 3 sessions on the 800, but that was then waived because it wasn't necessary. So my training was a bit more tailor-made, or it was manipulated a bit, because they saw that I had the type rating and I didn't actually enter the 800 sim at all before I started on the line. So I only did the 400 stuff and then went straight into line training. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So did you? And I'll ask you about the line training now. Having gone from the 800 back to the 400 or the classic series, did you find it massively different, or did you have quite a fair idea of what to expect?
So the principles and the philosophy, that's all exactly the same. Jet handling, it's identical. The 400 is obviously a much older aircraft, so you do need to get used to the round dial altimeter, and you've got a MASI, Mach and airspeed indicator, which is different to our speed tapes that we have on the 800s. So it was a slight adjustment, but once you do a couple of takeoffs, it's the same thing, really. I actually really enjoy the 400, how it flies. It flies a little bit different to the 800, a little bit more forgiving, and yeah, it's much of a muchness, I would say. It's really very similar, in my opinion.
That's it's very interesting to hear. Now, when you didn't actually touch the 737-800 sim before you began your line training, did you start your line training on the 400, or did you start it on the 800?
So I started it on the, good question, I think it was the 800. Let me just think now. This is a good couple of years ago, and I'm getting old. No, it was the 400. I first finished the 400 completely. Once that was done, signed off, line training completed, then jumped into the 800. But I don't think there was no sim before that, so it was kind of just straight into it. Straight into the 800, and went for the remainder of the line training.
Now, a lot of people say that line training is, in fact, the most challenging part of the whole training process before you actually get released the line. Can you just take us through what line training comprises of, and what did you find were the most challenging aspects about line training? So,
yeah, once you finish your simulator, that's all done. Then you jump into the line training aspect. There's a minimum amount of sectors, and that is based on the law, but also based on your operator. So the operator, whichever one is more restricting, you've got to do a minimum amount of sectors. And once you've reached the certain standard, and the training captain or the line check captain is happy, then they will sign you out. So I still remember my very first flight in an actual 737, and it was on the 23rd of November 2017, and I flew from Cape Town to East London and back, and then to Joburg and back to Cape Town. So a 4-sector day. And I still recall, even though I had spent 2 years in a 737 simulator, I still remember how extremely fast that first sector went. I was pilot monitoring, and it absolutely flew by. So I almost had 2 years to prepare, but even getting into the airplane for the first time was still a bit of a shock to the system. I mean, I knew what to do, I knew the procedures, but it's just a different experience when you actually in the airplane. And so yeah, it was like, wow, that was hectic, but I suppose it's like riding a bike. You get used to it, and then off you go, and then it's second nature. So yeah, did the line training. I think our minimum sectors is about 20 or 22 sectors. I can't recall now. And then you can do less than that for the other type. So the 800 was less sectors. And then off you go. The only restriction that you have after that is you need to fly. If you're a newly qualified FO, you need to fly with a more experienced captain that has more than 300 hours on type, and vice versa.
Okay. Now, you completed the line training, released the line. What's the process for undergoing command? When do you know that when does the operator decide that you are ready to commence the command upgrade, and what's the process for that? What is the, what are they looking for in terms of someone who's about to take command?
So there's a couple of factors involved there. One is the seniority, like on the list, when your number comes up and you're almost the next in line. Once that has been satisfied, then they also look, okay, what is your time on type? Do you meet the minimum requirements as per the flight operations manual? We've got restrictions and minimum requirements that our operator has, and I think that's 2,000 hours on type, if I'm not mistaken. Once you meet those requirements, then you go through what we call a command readiness program or a command preparation program. And this involves a number of things. Some time on the ground in the classroom with a training captain, and you have 2 days worth of chatting, discussing scenarios, discussing what would you do in this situation, decision making, thinking like a captain. And it's very much a training process. It's not an evaluation. It's purely for developing your skills as a captain. From then on, you do 4 simulator sessions. They are 4 hours each, and the first 3 are also training, going through scenarios, fires, passengers, medical emergencies, decompressions, loss of thrust on both engines, all the stressful stuff. And then the 4th and final day is the actual evaluation to see if the company is happy that you meet the standard. And so once you get through that and you've met the required standard, now you begin the full type rating again from the left-hand seat. You do a full initial, because I've done the initial as an FO, but now I need to do the initial as a captain. So you start again, and off you go. You repeat the process, full initial type rating. Once that's completed, a line training again on both types. So it's quite a process, but extremely enjoyable, and you learn a heck of a lot.
So it sounds like it's just a massive amount of work that to get to your position. It's ongoing, and it's just something you have to deal with.
Yeah, it is. That's very true. You work a lot. You study a lot. It's good to know where to find things. I'd encourage any aspiring commercial pilot to keep looking for stuff. Where do I find things? If somebody tells me, oh, but this is what the law says, then go and find it for yourself. Don't base it off what someone else has said. Where does it say that? What does the book say? And I definitely agree with you there. It is a lot of work, but it is very rewarding work, and it does pay off in the end. At the end of the day, that the airline is not expecting you to be flawless. Every single pilot right now, regardless of your stage of your career, is still learning something. They're still developing. There's still more to learn, and so it's a journey that we are all on.
Absolutely, it just doesn't happen overnight. But just based on listening to your story and being fortunate to be there for a little bit of it, it's about always putting your best foot forward and making those contacts and being willing to put in the work and just do whatever it takes,
Yeah, that's it. And every person is different. Everyone has a different journey. Everyone might have a different starting point. So yeah, just got it. It's a difficult. I must say, it's not an easy road, as you know. Many of us know it's not an easy road, but it is an extremely rewarding one as you move along.
Like I can believe that after achieving that goal for so many years, it can only be rewarding. Cam, I just want to ask you a question. Having been through the industry to get to your position, the 2020 was a tough year for a lot of people. We're heading in towards 2021. We're starting to see the recovery. What advice do you have for people starting out in the industry for the very first time?
So it's been a really upside down type of year. The last year or two have been really tough. You know, but like you say, Dan, there is definitely a recovery happening. So I would encourage guys starting out to just to keep pursuing any leads they might have. Don't burn any bridges with people. You never know who you are going to meet later on down the line. You know, you need to keep your relationships in the aviation world good. Be on good terms with the people around you and in the industry. But as to encouraging newly qualified pilots, you need to decide what is my goal? Where am I aiming? You know, do you want to be an instructor? Are you a training type of personality? Is training something that you're passionate about? That's obviously one avenue. Would you rather just go straight on contract and start to develop your skills doing that type of work? So there are many different avenues that we can go down. It's difficult to give a sort of one solution fits all. Everybody has to decide for themselves and base it on their situation. You know, it might be working in ops for a while. Maybe you work in an operations department for a year or two, and that gives you the opportunity to get a type rating. You know, brilliant. If that's what you want to do, go for it. Working in ops is probably better than working as a pizza delivery boy. So, you know, everyone is different.
Okay, brilliant, Cam. I've got one more question, and then we'll move to the Q&A session. You know, you mentioned everybody is different. You know, there are different opportunities that are available to people, but when it comes down to the person, what do you feel is the most important characteristic you need to make a success of yourself in this industry?
Sure, that is a difficult question. I think something that has come up a lot for me, and something that is also actually been highlighted in FlySafair lately is the crew members need to have a certain level of resilience. So to be resilient is to be able to bounce back from a tough situation, right? So we need this resilience not only when we are flying, not only in the flight deck, because that is definitely true, but we also need it in our personal capacity, trying to deal with the upsets of not getting the job interview, trying to deal with the upsets of even now people getting retrenched. I mean, that's intense. Pilots that have type ratings and thousands of hours are getting retrenched. You know, it's a really difficult time, and I think more than ever, airline pilots or aspiring commercial pilots need to have resilience. They need to be able to bounce back from that tough situation and keep moving forward, regardless of what's going on around them. It's really not an easy time now. Many people are looking for work. Many people have been laid off, etc., etc. So yeah, and resilience then also translates to the operation of the aircraft. You know, to be resilient in dealing with non-normal situations, to be resilient in dealing with unruly passengers, other crew members, whatever the case may be. That resilience is transferable to all that we do, actually, as pilots.
Okay, so resilience, and you say perseverance.
Yeah, for sure. You got to keep your head down and keep moving forward, for sure.
Awesome. Cam, thanks so much for that. Massively insightful there, and thanks for sharing your story. We're just going to move over to the question answer section of the discussion.
Cool.
Just give me a second here. We got one from a gentleman called Kevin. He says, I'm 31 and I'm feeling like time is running out for me to do flight training right now from PPL to JOC. Is there hope for people like me?
Yeah, Kevin, I think definitely, you know, you still have a lot of time. Many airlines do have minimum ages that they require, but those vary from maybe 45 or 55 years old. So you really do have a lot of time. 15 or 20 years is a lot can happen in that time frame. So I would say that you definitely do have time. There's no, it's not too late for you for sure. I definitely think that there's more than enough time for you.
Awesome. We got one from Mopeti. Says, super proud and inspired by you, man, Cameron. My question, when am I joining you in the right-hand seat?
How's it, Mo? Nice to hear from you, man. Well, as soon as you're ready, I believe some of your mates are already cadets at FlySafair, so get in there. It'll be amazing to see you.
Nice. Cam Yash asks, and it's probably leading on to something we've already discussed. What is something you would advise fresh commercial pilots to do or practice to be well prepared to operate for airlines?
That's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of answers to this question, but I've mentioned one or two things. When you get into an airline environment, your mindset sort of shifts. You kind of shift from part 91 type thinking to part 121 type thinking, and being a FAI and being familiar with the ins and outs of airline operations, the captain cars, what is required for airlines to operate. The other side is also the jet handling aspect. So I would encourage you, if you have an opportunity before your interview to do some form of jet handling training or jet orientation course, that would be extremely beneficial. It might be the make or break aspect for that interview, So yeah, get into the documentation, reading about in the Jefferson Airway manual, start going through some airline specific operations, keeping yourself fresh with what's going on in the airline world. And I find also, just to add on to that, it can be quite beneficial, and you can learn a lot from looking at past accidents and incidents and kind of tearing them apart a bit and looking at what would I do differently, look at that incident or accident and actually tear it apart in your mind. Yeah. And think to yourself, okay, if this has to happen to me, what am I going to do? That I find helps you to think and get into the mindset of operating in an airline.
Awesome. Cam, Eric van der Merwe says, congratulations on the command.
Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it. Hope you're well.
Warwick, Cam is a true gentleman. My question is, where'd you get the shirt?
Warwick, this shirt is I think this is a Christmas present actually from my wife. I believe she got it from Woolworths. While stocks last.
Brandon Gray, and this is the last question, Cam, we'll wrap up for today. What's the next step for you? Where do you see yourself, between 5 and 10 years from now?
Brandon, that is an interesting question. I think that in the last year or two, that the answer to that question might have changed for me. Initially I was thinking to myself, man, do I want to pursue a international carrier and do long haul flights and things like that? And that was in my mind, and I was sort of toying with the idea and chatting with my wife about that. Then COVID happened, and pretty much just before COVID occurred, I was privileged enough to upgrade to command, and I thought, man, this is an incredible opportunity. I don't think I want to go anywhere anytime soon. So it's a tough one, but I think for now to stay where I am. I've always had a passion for training, so hopefully one day in the next few years I could get involved in the training part of Safair. I still have a valid instructor, so hopefully that will come in handy, and maybe aim towards a training captain position if that happens. So yeah, that's what I would say, Brandon.